Hello and welcome, I'm Sarah, and this series of videos is about a 7-day fast which I did to raise awareness to fasting and also to raise some money for a local charity. I made the videos throughout the fast, so some of the video editing isn't very good, so I apologise for that. Also, I've aimed it more at lay people, so I've not gone into massive detail with the biochemistry, but I will be making more videos later going into more detail of some of the pathways for people who are interested. I hope you find this useful and informative, and if you have any questions, just please get in touch. So this video is going to be about inflammation, detoxification in a biochemical sense, chronic fatigue, migraines, and then just any other loose ends that need tying up. Because as humans, one size doesn't fit all, and due to genetic and gut microbiome variations, some people don't deal very well with fasting and some people don't deal very well with toxins and heavy metals, and it's a very real problem not to be overlooked. So first of all, I'll just start off with who shouldn't fast. So there's obviously obvious things, people who have an eating disorder, people who are pregnant. And then the other one is people who have migraines, because even though the ketones which get produced during a fast are really beneficial for migraines because they're anti-inflammatory, they stimulate the GABA system, which is the calming down side of the nervous system. Making ketones via fasting for people with migraines isn't a good idea because they're already in a glucose deprived state, and they have something that's almost like glucagon resistance. So glucagon's the opposite to insulin, and it pushes the blood sugar back up again in the absence of, say, taking food in. So for somebody with migraines, if they want to go into ketosis, they can either do a ketogenic diet, but be careful with it, or buy MCTs, which are ketones which you can take in orally, or you can buy something called BHB. When it comes to chronic fatigue and fasting, I'll cover this more when we talk about inflammation and heavy metals. So people with chronic fatigue, it's fine, but you need to do a detox first, because in my humble opinion, a lot of stuff like chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia is very likely to be due to toxin overload, and I'll go into that shortly. When it comes to inflammation, that's something which affects everybody, and inflammation, briefly in a biochemical sense, is for whatever reason your body thinks that you're under attack from something, like you're chronically infected. So it's not inflammation as in when you sprain your ankle and it swells up. It's a biochemical process where genes are switched on, cytokines and things are made, and biochemical inflammation happens because the body's trying to fight off an invader, and sometimes there's nothing there, so it'll end up damaging itself, such as joints or the insides of arteries. Because, as I've said before, inflammation plays a massive role in cardiovascular disease because it irritates the lining of the blood vessels, and then via a variety of pathways things can happen and plaques can build up, which is a whole other topic all on its own. So when it comes to inflammation, there are ways to block it once it's started. So that would be using things which block interleukins or NF-kappa beta. So there are a variety of different compounds which do this. But the best way to solve the inflammation is to take away the thing that's causing it in the first place. Often it's stuff that comes in through breathing, which we can't help doing, and also the second, or maybe for some people the first biggest route of inflammation into the body is via food. So that's partly why fasting helps people lower inflammation, because they've taken away a massive chunk of things which are causing inflammation, and also digesting food in itself is difficult and inflammatory for the body. However, obviously we can't not eat, and in the same way that we can't not breathe. Also, toxins and things come in via drinking water, so it isn't really a good idea to drink tap water. It is recommended to get a water filter. There are also particular foods which are inflammatory, such as polyunsaturated fats which have been heat treated, so soybean oil or vegetable oils, cotton oil, canola oil, things like that, because first of all, making the oil is a massive industrial undertaking all of its own, so it's not particularly great And then if you go and heat it to massive temperatures, it becomes oxidized, and then these molecules go around the body and oxidize other fats, including cholesterol, and make them misbehave. So the whole thing of this bad cholesterol and LDL and HDL, the bad cholesterol is cholesterol that's been oxidized by these other fats that people have taken in. Also, becoming insulin resistant or eating too much sugar is inflammatory as well, because first of all, high blood sugar itself is inflammatory because there's too much sugar going around, and it can non-enzymically glycosylate things in the body. So that just means it sticks glucose on them and makes them sticky or leaky when they shouldn't be. Also, as people become insulin resistant and their baseline level of insulin rises, even if their blood sugar is normal, high insulin itself is also inflammatory. And then there are a variety of other compounds and things in the environment and food which trigger inflammation, and it can vary from person to person. So some people have problems with gluten, other people have problems with lectins, which are in nightshade vegetables, potatoes, nuts. Some people have trouble with egg whites. So why does all this matter? Well, the main thing is that over the years I've encountered lots of different situations that people have, and chronic fatigue is something that I've never been able to get my head around, and it's just caused me huge frustration. So first of all, mercury, which we get from tooth fillings, the environment and fish, this is one of the main culprits in my view that's a problem for chronic fatigue, because first of all, mercury binds to loads of different enzymes in the body and inhibits them. So in biochemistry assays, if you put mercury in your experiment, it stops pretty much everything. The mercury also binds to things in the mitochondria and slows down how they make energy, and pretty much everyone agrees that mitochondria play a big role in things like chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. So the mercury is going to make them less efficient and also make them produce more free radicals, which will then produce more inflammation. Also, mercury overexcites the glutamate system in the body, which is part of the sympathetic nervous system, or the fight or flight. So this puts people in a constant state of anxiety, because I have come across people who have chronic fatigue but are anxious all the time. When you're constantly in fight or flight mode and you don't sleep properly, this eventually will start to burn out the adrenals. I don't really like that word. You overburden the adrenals, and you can get something called adrenal fatigue, which is again is another word that I don't like, but it's kind of thrown around quite a lot. So again, once the adrenal glands are starting to fail, then people can't make enough cortisol and adrenaline, so they get more tired and more fatigued. To add on to all of this, mercury and cadmium also inhibit the conversion of thyroxine into T3. So in my previous video I was talking about thyroid hormones and how the thyroxine is the coffee bean and the T3 is the ground coffee, the useful bit. So on multiple levels, mercury, it sounds like a really good culprit in chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. Also, as a person becomes more toxic with different toxins, they become more and more inflamed, and inflammation inhibits detoxification, and detoxification causes inflammation. So we have this vicious cycle, because the way the body uses electrons and things for chemical reactions, making inflammation is going one way and detoxification goes the other way, and detoxification happens in the rest and digest phase of the body when you heal. So if you're all ramped up because of these toxins and you're in fight and flight all the time, that's the wrong nervous system state to be healing and detoxifying. Another thing which is important is lead, because lead likes to reside in the bones and it causes problems with the osteoblasts which build bone. So lead in itself plays a role in osteoporosis. When osteoporosis starts to take hold and the bones degrade, the lead comes out of the bones and into the blood and causes systemic lead toxicity, but also now it's escaped in the blood, it annoys the osteoblasts even more and accelerates the osteoporosis. Also, when it comes to osteoporosis, the worst thing you can do is just use calcium to try and fix it, because it's not really the problem. There's much more to it than that, because you need vitamin K and vitamin D3 as well. So the vitamin K2 just tells the calcium where to go. But again, that's another massive topic. And osteoporosis is very interesting biochemically. And like lots of things, people just treat it completely the wrong way. To add on to all of this, there are all of the things like pesticides, fire retardants, plastics and stuff, and those tend to like to hide in the body fat, and they act as hormone disruptors, particularly estrogen mimetics. So that would cause excess estrogen, which would be things like water retention, weight problems, brain fog, irritability, and so on. Pretty much all of these heavy metals and toxins and pesticides affect the brain and produce brain fog, cognition problems, sleep issues, and they're a very real problem for everybody. So people that just think it's woo-woo, well, you're just missing out on something really important. So let's talk about detoxification, because people think it's just this thing that people drink a load of juice and feel crap, and they feel crap because it must be working because the toxins are coming out, which is complete nonsense. Because if you do your detox properly, the unwanted molecules should just leave quietly and seamlessly, like a bouncer just escorting somebody out of a nightclub quietly. So first of all, as I said before about fasting, having fruit juice isn't a fast, because you're taking in a load of sugar, and also lots of plants are covered in pesticides. Plants have things in them because to protect themselves from being eaten by us or insects, so they're not necessarily this amazing health food that people think they are. So in my view, I don't really rate juice fast, and again, if you're going to do something, just do it properly. During detoxification, the most important thing really is that you need plenty of something called glutathione, because that's the body's #1 detoxification molecule. And what glutathione does, it attaches itself to toxins, and this sort of tags them and changes their properties so that then they can start to be removed from the body. Genetically, some people make less glutathione than others. Some people have liver issues, which means they don't make enough glutathione. Certain medications affect how much glutathione you make. I think paracetamol and aspirin do, like even simple things like that. So to get enough glutathione, there's several different ways whether you want to take supplements or not. So making sure that you've got plenty of amino acids to make the glutathione in the first place. So people that don't eat meat could be a bit low. However, you can take a supplement called N-acetylcysteine, which is the precursor to glutathione. You can buy glutathione itself inside a liposome. It has to be in a liposome, otherwise it doesn't work properly, so anything else is a waste of time. Also, when you fast, the body makes loads more glutathione anyway. So there are lots of ways to make sure that you've got enough glutathione. Because if you don't have enough glutathione, you can't tag the toxins, and then all the next steps don't work properly. There are other things which are needed for detoxification, like methyl groups and sulfate, but that's starting to get a bit complicated for now. So we'll keep it simple. The next bit that needs to happen is the liver needs to correctly process all of these toxins. So if it's burdened or leaky or fatty, it's going to have a little bit of trouble processing the toxins so they can stay in the liver. And there are a variety of compounds that you can get that can help the liver. When it comes to fasting, because it automatically gets rid of fatty liver, because the body's looking for energy, so it'll move or eat or use the fat out of the liver first, because it shouldn't be there. So that's another reason why fasting can help with the detoxification process. So some of the things which you can take to help the liver deal with these toxins are things like berberine, resveratrol, milk thistle, alpha-lipoic acid and phosphatidylcholine. So alpha-lipoic acid is a bit different because it actually helps the toxins get out of the cells. So that's a really important ingredient in all of this. So let's say that everything went well in the phase of the liver, so it's managed to process these toxins, and what's the next stage? So the next thing that happens is all this gets mixed with bile, and you just need to make sure there's sufficient bile flow. So that's where the phosphatidylcholine helps. You need to have enough cholesterol and a functioning system here. Then the bile gets dumped into the intestine, and this is where you need things like binders, which would be chitosan, activated charcoal, zeolite, clay, variety of gums. And this is where people often go wrong, because if you forget or the body can't bind the toxins in the gut and poo them out, all that happens is they just get reabsorbed back in the blood, back in the liver, and the whole process carries on, and people feel dreadful and the toxins are still there. Also, when you do it this way, using the liver and the gut as the main detox pathways, this puts less burden on the kidneys, because they can deal with toxins to some extent, but they're not meant to have the lion's share. And when they're overburdened, people get things like backache and kidney discomfort. The skin is also like the third kidney, so sweating during a fast or a detox is a really good idea. So that would be using saunas or exercise. So to sum up, some people are lucky and they do a fast, switch on their glutathione, their cholesterol goes up because the body's making more acetyl-CoA, and the bile flows, the molecules get detoxified, dumped in the gut and get removed. However, as I said before, this doesn't work for everybody. So when it comes to a fast, even if you can't be bothered with any of the other things, if you just eat the charcoal and the binders, so that any toxins that get dumped in the gut, you can just bind them and poo them out. So that's if you really can't be bothered with all the rest of it. If you are really interested in this stuff, because it's quite complicated, if you're not familiar with biochemistry, just feel free to get in touch and I'll guide you with it, because I do think it's something that is really overlooked and it causes way more problems and people blame other factors. Anyway, if you're interested in all of this stuff, please get in touch. I've also been writing a biochemistry book for about 2 years, but because I'm always researching and trying stuff out, I always find better ways to do things or new research, or there are certain things that it's taken me like 10 years to sort of understand in its entirety and make sense of it, because sometimes if there's 2 bits of the jigsaw missing, the whole thing doesn't work.